pull up a chair and join us at the Energy Roundtable.
Welcome to the weekly show where myself and typically Lisa Katz debate the news and notes, but she is off being a mom and doing a great job, so the indications would tell. And in her stead, we have our Director of Engineering, Mr. Bill Davidson. Bill, welcome to the Energy Roundtable.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
So we have put Elon Musk in his place in history amongst the egotistical pharaohs of Egypt and the kings of Western Europe who found the modern world. And now we will discuss the relevant news of the day. So my first article is from Euronews.com, and the headline of the article is "Solar energy can now be stored for up to 18 years, says scientists." Newsflash, the dinosaurs would say that solar energy can be stored for 63 million years, but that's a parenthetic note. So the story here is that in 2017, a Swedish university brought kind of this technology that allowed solar energy to be able to convert kind of through a thermoelectric that's the second part of the story. The first part is they take the solar energy and they are able to store it in some kind of isomer, and I'm forgetting my organic chemistry, but basically through this technology called molecular solar thermal energy storage systems, or MOST. I don't quite understand the acronym, but basically they take carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen, and the sunlight changes the shape of that molecule, and it turns it into an energy-rich isomer. And they tweaked it and they played with it a little bit, and they were able to figure out how to store that isomer for up to 18 years. So that was kind of the initial breakthrough. And now they have figured out how to go backwards, and they've a partnership with a Chinese university, it looks like, allows them then to take that energy that was and release it, and by releasing it, convert it back to electricity. So the cool part here is you can now take the sun's energy and you can convert it and store it for a long period of time, and then you can take it back. And so you could potentially move it as a liquid throughout geography, or you can store it for long periods of time, which has always been the challenge with intermittent renewables like solar and wind, is how do you store it and then bring it out. So they've been doing it in small quantities. It's by no means commercial yet, but it's a cool initiative to take this solar energy, put it in a liquid form, and then release it later. So interesting stuff. I think you had some technical difficulties. Not sure how much of that you caught, Bill, but arguably the best story that we've had on the Energy Roundtable for many years, and you missed it. Welcome back.
I wish I could comment. The truth is, I actually did see this article just because I tend to read stuff like this, and so I did find that really interesting. I'm always interested in these different storage techniques.
Yes.
And I love the ones that are a bit out. Not that this is totally out there, right? But the ones that are not the, I guess you could say, typical or historical methods that we've used before. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and it's like at one point I saw a great shirt the other day. It was an AC/DC shirt, and it had was it Edison and Tesla, or I forget who were the two. But like for a while we were competing against what's the best way of moving current around, right? Like we're kind of in that, I think, in terms of storage. Like we're competing against about what's the best, and our kids will look back and have T-shirts, or I don't know, full wear shirts then, but they'll look back and they'll say, remember we talked about different storage. And there will be winners, but to get to the winners, we have to have a bunch of losers, and it's kind of fun to figure out what those losers are, what the winners are. We're going to learn a lot along the way. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Tesla was pro AC, is my recollection, and if you've ever seen, there's a video out there where Edison, to demonstrate the horrors of AC electricity, they actually electrocuted a full-grown elephant just to show. Which was and taped it, which was filmed it back then, which was nuts. But that battle was something else back in the day between those two. But anyway,
the electrocuted elephant was to show the perils of AC.
Correct.
Okay, so Pamela Anderson is also pro DC. Is that what we're saying as well?
I don't get it.
Oh, so Pamela Anderson is kind of the spokesperson for PETA, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. So she would not have liked that. Mind you, it was 100 and how many years ago?
It was 100 years ago.
Yeah. Now there is a lot of, ironically, there is a lot of DC current at high voltage transmissions. It is feasible, but certainly AC is predominant in most of our world. So,
sure.
anyways, moving on from Pamela Anderson to your first article.
I should say just for the record, that was actually pretty controversial even back in the day. Just so you know.
Oh, was it?
The story around that, yes.
Okay.
yes, it was. It was horrible even back then. Yes.
Okay.
So my story. The first one is about. This is from the BBC, and the headline was "Climate Change: Wind and Solar Reach Milestone as Demand Surges." And this is from a report from Ember, and this is a climate energy think tank. It's from their Global Electricity Review 2022. And the news here is that wind and solar hit 10% of global electricity in 2021. This was a review of energy usage in 2021. Of course, this is arbitrary milestone, but it is good to get an excuse for an update as to where we are on this front, because I wouldn't have known what the number was. So knowing that we hit this, to me, is still news.
Is that on an energy basis or on a capacity basis?
On a what basis, sorry?
On like an energy basis, or is it on like installed capacity?
I thought it was on usage.
Okay, okay, energy. I call that energy. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Go on. So, the first thing they wanted to kind of get out there was that there's this huge increase in demand for power in 2021 as a rebound, I guess, for COVID-19. But this was crazy. The delta, so the increase in 2021, increase in power demand was equivalent to adding another India to the world.
Whoa!
Which is huge. I think they're fifth in the world, if I remember correctly,
in power
for power consumption. Yeah. So this 10%, what does this really mean? Like, what do you compare it to? So this is actually doubled from 5%, obviously, in 2015. So in 6 years. And that 2015 is when the Paris Climate Agreement happened. Right. And they did call out some names there. So the fastest recent adopters for wind and solar were Netherlands, Vietnam, and Australia.
Really?
And yes, they all, in that time span, they shifted about 10% of their fossil fuel power over to wind and solar. And it's funny because the Netherlands itself is being touted as an example of not needing to be near the equator to make solar work, which I thought was
cool.
Yeah. So Vietnam, their solar increased by 300% in 1 year, and that was because of some government incentives and programs. Another point that they made in this review was that clean energy now makes up 38% of the world's total. Didn't get a definition of clean energy. Sometimes I wonder, like, is gas on there, for instance?
Right.
Some are very clear what's on which side, but there's a couple I'm not so sure of.
Clean is a relative term, right? And I'm reminded of that every time I talk to my kids about cleaning their room, right? My son's room is clean, but only relative to his sister's. So clean is a relative term as it comes to power.
It really is, and it's changed over the years too. But I didn't get the definition from the report. So anyway, but here's the kicker to all this, though.
Okay.
We saw the largest increase in coal usage since 1985.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a rise of 9%. Most of this was China and India. Gas, by comparison, was up 1%, and that's just literally the difference in the prices between the two. Gas in that
increasing coal.
It is, but the article does end on an optimistic note, which I was not expecting. But basically, to meet our 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial max number that we're going for, we would have to increase our wind and solar by 20% yearly until 2030. But the way they looked at it, the authors, was that they believe that the gains that we've seen over the last few years are an indication that this is at least possible. So there you go.
Cool.
Some positive in the end.
I love it. That's great. And you gave us a kind of a comprehensive view of the broader market, and some good and some bad, but at the end of the day, we're moving in the right direction. So very good. Under the banner of clean energy, albeit clean has a broad definition and depends on how long you draw the how big you draw the control volume. People may have different views on nuclear, particularly as it relates to nuclear waste. But this is not a nuclear waste article, but it is a nuclear-related article. It's from power-eng.com. It was published on the 5th of April. And the title is SMR Startup Lines Up Financing for Nuclear Power Plant Deployment. And so the article is about a company called ARC Clean Energy Canada, ARC Clean Energy Canada. They have completed a Series A financing, which is one of the early financing stages as companies grow, to the extent that I understand it, as I've been educated in finance by the gurus that are on TikTok. So credit to them. But ARC has raised $30 million Canadian in their Series A financing. And really what that's doing is moving forward SMR for grid scale at the Point Lepreau nuclear generating station in the province of New Brunswick, which, fun, interesting Canadian fact, is indeed the only bilingual province in Canada. Credit to my friend John Coleman, who often brings that up. Quebec and other provinces are monolingual. New Brunswick is the only bilingual province in Canada. But after that commercial break, this builds kind of on the late March announcement from Ontario, New Brunswick, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, where they release a strategic plan about SMRs, more broadly throughout Canada. And this also kind of comes on the heels of another big SMR financing deal in Japan for a company called Japan New Scale Innovation, where they got $110 million in equity financing. So the ARC technology in particular is 100 megawatt, a fast reactor. So they have like a 20-year refueling cycle. And the intent is that a lot of this modular design is done in a factory. So that should, in theory, broaden the supply chain, drive, ultimately lower cost deployment and lower cost, execution. So obviously there's phases, and we have a nuclear safety commissioner in Canada that will provide a lot of regulation to this. But yeah, really exciting to raise that much money for SMR development. Really, really exciting news.
Yeah, I agree. Anything that progresses this, in my mind, is exciting. I really want to. I wish I could predict where it was going. Like, where are the licenses actually going to be given out here? Are we going to get to the point that a municipality can have one of these?
Right.
I just don't know.
And is the license given at the technology level or at the site level? And that to me is critical, right? Like,
right.
If it's at the technology level, then it truly is repeatable. If it's at the site level, you're going to have NIMBYism. You're going to have a whole bunch of stuff that's going to come to fruition. Which I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. It's just going to be that much more challenging, right?
Yep. Yeah, we just haven't had to experience an experience like this. Yeah, at least I can't think of a parallel that's really like this. So
Totally,
be really interesting.
Time will tell. Cool. You got one more for us?
I do. I thought this one was interesting just because I didn't know about it. That's why. And it seems significant. And it is from CBC, and the title is Newfoundland Government Lifts 15-Year Ban on Onshore Wind Farms. So there was a 2007 moratorium on onshore wind power. It's now been lifted.
Wow.
Get that straight from the title there. I just found it extremely interesting that the province with objectively the most wind has the lowest amount of wind power.
Wow.
So this there is a little bit more to this, in that this happens to coincide with the federal approval of a very controversial offshore oil project. That's the Bay du Nord project. These are this is for FPSOs, floating production, storage, and offloading, as opposed to the platforms.
So you're calling this a quid pro quo, are you?
So that's exactly where I'm going with this. Yeah. So and at the same time, the oil and gas regulator in Newfoundland, which is Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador Offshore Petroleum Board, they've changed their name. They've substituted petroleum for energy. So there's a bit of a a shift here.
Yes.
So obviously that is exactly where I was going here. That the charges are being leveled. There was a bunch of articles after this article where charges are basically being leveled at the removal of that moratorium is really just cover for this Bay du Nord project going ahead. Because it's obviously at odds with the zero greenhouse gas 2050 goal that we're all trying to do here. But I mean, this comes down to economics, right? So.
Yeah.
Not making any judgments here. I saw the money involved in the jobs and all that, and it's obviously something you have to consider. So.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we like to talk about technology and talk about even the economics of it, the reality is energy is such a big thing, particularly in a province like Newfoundland, but I would say all provinces, that it's not at all free from politics, rightly or wrongly. Politics can be a powerful source for good or for not so good. But yeah, this is definitely a political story, and we will never know all the impacts. And so we have to assume that we have good actors and good ideas, and it will all work out for the best. So,
or we just really keep an eye on them.
Okay. Yes.
Both of those.
That's an underlying premise of democracy, right? We go to the polls every once in a while, and hopefully in between we're keeping eye on everybody so we know how to vote the next time around.
Exactly.
On that topic of voting, we, I think, have our good friend Mr. Mark Charbonneau back from some technical difficulties. Mark, there you are. You look like you're on a new device. Oh, you're on mute, Mark.
How about now?
There you go. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on my phone. I'm having some issues with my computer right now, so I don't even want to chance chiming in with that because I got to run some diagnostics on it. So
okay.
Control.
Start with Control Alt Delete. Oh, that doesn't work for you guys, does it?
No. Okay, so did we decide on our face-off?
You decided for us, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to. So I'm thinking we're doing the pros and cons if Elon Musk takes over Twitter. That's what I think we should do.
Yeah. We couldn't help ourselves. We actually already started before.
Started the debate ahead of time, but we're glad you're here to referee.
Okay, good. So I know, Bill, apparently, as I understand, you're not a fan of Elon Musk, so I'm eager to hear why. So actually, I'm hoping you get the pro side. So
that's difficult. That'd be painful, but we'll see how the coin flip goes, I guess.
Okay, so I think Matt won last roundtable, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Matt, I'll let you call it. Heads or tails?
Okay. Heads.
It is indeed heads.
Okay, so I get to choose which side of the argument I want, right?
Yeah. So do you want Elon Musk to take over Twitter or not?
I'll go pro.
Oh.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'll be pro the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter.
All right.
Okay. And clearly no prep for this, just going off, not that even if I had worlds of time I would prep, it's just not my style. So yeah, I think we have to step back and take a look at Elon and what he's done, pre being famous. Obviously he was, kind of a big deal at was it LinkedIn? Where was he before? He was Square
PayPal.
or
PayPal, yeah.
PayPal, right? Yeah, kind of a big deal at one of the founders of PayPal, and did a lot of great things there. I bought a lot of merchandise, used golfing merchandise in particular, or English Premier League football paraphernalia on eBay in my younger years. Thankful to Elon and his team for making that happen. And then obviously on to Tesla and SpaceX and this company that's going to put tunnels all over America. So doing a lot of great stuff. Yes, the business model is suspect, but clearly he can take something and make something cool out of it. And so, Twitter is, kind of that one of those Web 2.0 technologies that hasn't really, they went up and then they kind of plateaued and haven't really, kind of moved the needle. So I'm excited for what he can do to the platform. I think it's a cool platform. I think it's got good brand equity. I think there's lots of opportunities, but, has been kind of stagnant. And so I'm excited to see, what he can do with that. And he's tapped into Web 3.0 and the blockchain. And I think he kind of merged that and how do we provide, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, and integrate that into Twitter. So some really exciting things that, could come of that. And, being a small business owner myself, I know there are pros and cons to both, individual or a small concentration of leadership versus, boards and CEOs and publicly traded companies. But obviously, I understand, the good and the bad, but I think having somebody like that with, if it does turn into a takeover and he has, an outsized control, I think that's potentially a good thing. I know there will be criticisms because it's a pseudo media outlet. But, who are we kidding? Most of the media outlets today are already controlled by, folks like Mr. Murdoch, or there's a family in Eastern Canada that is kind of into this as well, who shall remain nameless. So it's already happening where big moguls control the press, and my hope is that he can use it and elevate it for good, and only time will tell.
All right.
Really? Over to you, Mr. Davidson.
Okay. So I'll try not to repeat what I said before, but basically, I've been conflicted with Elon because he has definitely been a boon to scientific progress, but he's also been a purveyor of misinformation. And if you're an investor, this is going to bring you heart palpitations, right? Because any stability you may have had previously, in that stock is out the door now. So, and part of this is that he's a serial abuser of SEC rules. And what I think is fundamentally important about his particular flouting of these rules is that he genuinely does not appear to understand that he's being punished because he has an unfair advantage. His politics lean a little bit libertarian, like capital L libertarian, which is of course fine, but his motivations do appear to be led by a lack of understanding of the effect that his actions and words actually have on other people. He tends to put perceived threats to his own freedom above his own responsibility that comes with the elevated status that he's actually found himself with, right? Being the richest person on the planet who at the same time exhibits this persecution complex, it's a bad look. Now, I've heard Musk referred to as a Dunning-Kruger poster child, and if you're not familiar with that, that's the psychological study that it shows that a person's confidence in their knowledge on a subject goes up as your actual knowledge goes down. And although that's a bit harsh to call him the poster child, he clearly suffers from the phenomenon, as we all do to some degree, but his examples have just been a lot more public. He gets in these ridiculous Twitter spats where he appears to be completely clueless that he's even losing. He's no epidemiologist, he's not a nanoparticle scientist, and these are all things he's opined on and looked really silly at. And don't get me started on his toxic fanboy army. They're ridiculous. So this has been a person who has obviously been hugely successful, and I have to say he is legit. He has a physics degree, has an economics degree. He's accepted into a material science PhD program, and he did quickly drop out, but he dropped out to make a bucket load of money on the internet. And I'm a huge fan of SpaceX. The cost of putting a kilogram of mass into orbit, it's basically been reduced by about 90% in the last decade, which is unreal. Never thought I would see that. Just, it's crazy. So we still don't know if he can make money selling cars because, remember, the net profit is a result of selling regulatory credits from other automakers in addition to the car sales. But regardless, there's no doubt that Tesla's contribution to the industry is a legend and will remain so. But ultimately, with respect to Twitter, this is about a misguided individual with money who's trying to manipulate one of the greatest forms of communication we have ever had. As you can tell, I'm a huge Twitter fan. And given this guy's past of playing coy with medical misinformation, harassment, and political trolling, this is just not someone that we can have at the helm. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you think it's more dangerous than those who lead the Washington Post or Facebook or other media platforms?
Yes, because the thing is, any sort of big platform, you have to remember that there are responsibilities that come along with that, because these, we separate this from government with respect to the First Amendment, right? And it's a really important separation there. So a private company has their own rules, but the big private companies, if you notice, don't act as if the First Amendment applies, because it doesn't. But they don't act that way because they have an additional responsibility because of their size, because of their undue influence. They can literally change elections. They can literally kill people. We had this term that we used to call stochastic terrorism, right? Which is the idea that if you keep saying, well, it would be a shame if something happened to this abortion clinic or something like that, and some crazy person, because you're talking to 100 million people, well, there's going to be a few crazy people in that 100 million people. So was there any difference than you going and doing that damage, right? It's the same type of thing. If you have that sort of platform, it's more like stochastic homicide in this case. But when you have a big platform and you allow people to say whatever they want with no rules, then that type of stuff is going to happen. And you did it. Logically you did it, and morally I would say also you did it. So yes, getting back to your point, like what's the difference with all these organizations? Those organizations have those rules in place. That's the bottom line. So if you're going to hand the reins over to a person who literally doesn't understand this is beyond his ken, right? He's a smart guy, but not in every area. He has shown that to us. And if you give somebody like that the reins and the ability to have even more control than the guy has, to make the mistakes he makes, bad scene. Leave it to the adults. That's my opinion.
But do you think his outsized influence has grown? I mean, he had a very massive Twitter following already, and he had the blue check mark, and he has the brand recognition. People are either listening to him or not listening to him already. The fact that he owns the platform that he has a big platform on, does that change the game, you think?
Absolutely. It changes everything, because people, there will be people that revolt. Will I be one of those people? Maybe. But the truth is, it's still going to be a huge platform, and his ability to manipulate things in that platform is very limited right now. Like, he has all these things that he wants to do, bring in an edit function and show some transparency in these different things. The problem is, these are all probably, we could give him a chance and see, but I don't really want to. But these are probably just a pretense for him to basically bring in rules that he has not really thought out, because he's not that guy, and this is not his area. He's like free speech. Well, you know what? That's awesome. Free speech is really important, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you're protecting against things like fraud, right? Free speech. You can say what you want to some extent. Well, you can't tell lies to the point that somebody loses money, right? We all accept that that's true. So, and it's the same with, should we be protecting people from medical misinformation or election integrity misinformation? The answer is obviously yes, because if we don't, then you're controlling it, and you're basically giving that control to whoever is the loudest, and that is obviously not the way to go. So yes, I do think that there are some ideas in what he wants to do that I'm actually okay with, like the transparency idea. How does their algorithms work? They show content, right? Even if it's crap content, you can convince people by mass, right? By volume, not necessarily by the quality of their content. So how does that algorithm work? I would like to know. So some of these ideas have merit to them. Should they be spearheaded by a lunatic? No. So that's how I feel about it.
In closing, I would just, as we talk about outsized influence, I would just like the judge to acknowledge that my counterpart in this debate had twice as many minutes of airtime than I did. So I was setting you up though, because I kept asking you questions.
I was going to say that's so unfair when you ask the questions, but the answer has to be exactly the same.
The verdict is?
I gotta say, Elon should stick to rockets and just lay off Twitter. Bill convinced me.
Okay.
I'm going into this because I kind of like Elon. I find him kind of like quirky and like he's kind of likable for like a silly way. And he is for free speech, which I am as well. But Bill convinced me, I guess. No Elon with Twitter. Stay away.
No Elon with Twitter.
Nope.
Love it. Well, on that note, we will wrap up. Bill, well done. I agree with Mark. Compelling arguments. By the way, he's like at 9-point-something%. Like he doesn't. He's rattling sabers, but he's not there yet, is he?
Oh no, you didn't read the news today, did you?
I didn't know.
He's put out a bid for the whole thing.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
54 billion or something, wasn't it?
Something
Crazy.
like that. Some crazy amount. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, timely. You guys are ahead of me. That's great. Love it. Well, thank you both as always. Never boring. Always exciting. Energy, politics, social media. You get it all here. It's your one-stop shop for whatever this was. Thank you both. Always fun. Thank you to our listeners. Until next week, stay safe, have fun, and remember, you're not in this alone.